The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Galactic Council vessel. Susan Miller stood quietly, her blue uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. At 42, she had never imagined being the first human to step aboard an alien ship. 20 years in the North American Space Defense Force had prepared her for many things, but not for this moment. "Captain Miller, the Council representatives will see you now," said her aide, a young lieutenant named Alan West. Susan nodded and straightened her shoulders. First impressions mattered, especially when representing the entire human race. The council chamber was vast, with curved walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. 7 different alien species sat in tiered seating, watching her with eyes, sensory organs, and other perception devices she couldn't begin to understand. "Welcome, Earth representative," said a tall, slender being with silver skin that reflected the room's soft light. "I am High Speaker Zorath of the Velhari, current leaders of the Galactic Council." Susan performed the greeting she had been taught. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I extend our gratitude for this historic meeting." Zorath made a gesture that might have been amusement. "Your species has achieved space travel remarkably quickly. Most take twice as long to reach your current level." "We've always been eager explorers," Susan replied carefully. "Indeed. Your colonies on Mars and Europa, while primitive, show potential." Zorath gestured to the other council members. "We have observed many young species. Most follow predictable patterns of development. A smaller alien with multiple limbs and eyes surrounding its central body core moved forward. I am Delegate Thraxis of the Morphari Collective. Our studies suggest humans have unusual adaptability compared to other oxygen-breathing carbon-based life forms." Susan wasn't sure if that was a compliment. "Thank you. We've had to adapt throughout our history." "You misunderstand," Zorath interrupted. "The Council's purpose is to guide developing species into the galactic community safely and gradually. Your adaptability concerns some members." Susan kept her expression neutral. "May I ask why?" "Species that advance too quickly often destroy themselves or others," said a deep voice from a massive being with leathery gray skin. "The Drakari learned this lesson painfully in our early history." Zorath nodded. "The Council has existed for over 12,000 years. Our protocols exist for good reasons. We understand caution," Susan said. "But humanity is ready for greater engagement." "That is not for you to decide," Zorath replied. "Standard procedure grants Earth observer status for 50 years before consideration for probationary membership." Susan felt her heart sink but maintained her diplomat's smile. "We look forward to learning from the Council during that time." 3 days later, Earth's leaders met in an emergency session in Geneva. Susan's report had caused considerable concern. 50 years of watching from the sidelines is unacceptable," said the European Federation president. "We've worked too hard to be treated like children." Richard Bennett, recently appointed as Earth's ambassador, studied the council documents Susan had brought back. His eyes narrowed as he found something interesting. "There might be a way," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. At 35, Richard was young for his position, but his brilliance in international law had made him the clear choice. "What have you found?" asked Susan. Richard pointed to a section of text. "The Council's classification system has never been challenged, but their founding charter includes provisions for exactly that." "How could you possibly know?" asked the Chinese representative. "Their language is barely translatable." Richard smiled. "I've been working with Dr. Nancy Clark at Berkeley. She's made breakthroughs in understanding their oldest dialects." 3 weeks later, Richard stood before the full Galactic Council. The ceremony to officially classify Earth as an observer world was considered a formality. The 17 major Council species and representatives from over 200 member worlds watched with mild interest. Zorath spoke the traditional words. "Earth, you are welcomed as an observer to the Galactic Council. In 50 cycles, your progress will be evaluated for potential advancement." This was the moment when Richard was expected to bow and express gratitude. Instead, he stood tall. "High Speaker, before accepting this classification, I invoke Article 7 of the Founding Charter. The chamber went completely silent. Then whispers and clicks and electronic communications buzzed throughout the room. Zorath's silver skin darkened slightly. That article has not been cited in over 9,000 years. How could you possibly know of it? Richard smiled. We studied your public archives carefully. Impossible, hissed a Drakari representative. The founding language is known only to council leadership. Yet here we are, Richard replied calmly. He turned to address the full council. Article 7 allows any species to challenge their classification if they can demonstrate mastery of the founder's language and knowledge of council law. Richard then spoke a single word in a language so ancient that most council members had never heard it spoken aloud. Avitram. The effect was immediate. Council members rose from their seats. Some shouted, others made threatening gestures. Security. Drones moved into position. Zorath raised his hands for silence. Ambassador Bennett has invoked the right of challenge in the proper ancient form. As much as it disturbs me, council law is clear. A full hearing must be granted. This is outrageous, growled the Drakari representative. They are barely space-capable. Yet they have done what no species has attempted in 9 millennia, said an ancient being whose physical form was barely visible beneath glowing robes. This was an archivist, one of the oldest council races. Susan, watching from the Earth delegation's small platform, felt a mixture of pride and fear. They had surprised the council, but would they now face consequences? Later, aboard their small ship, she confronted Richard. That was incredibly risky. Richard nodded. But necessary. The council is stagnant, Susan. They've been doing things the same way for thousands of years. The Drakari representative looked ready to declare war, she pointed out. Some will resist change, Richard agreed. But others seemed intrigued. We've opened a door that's been closed for too long. As they spoke, messages were already racing across the galaxy. Humanity had done the unthinkable. With a single ancient word, they had challenged the very foundations of galactic governance. On distant worlds, council species debated what this meant. Some feared human unpredictability, others welcomed the possibility of change. And on Earth, scientists worked day and night to understand the alien technology they had glimpsed. Humanity prepared for either a new era of friendship among the stars or a conflict unlike anything in their history, all because of one word, Avitram. We challenge. News of Richard's challenge spread across Earth like wildfire. People gathered in homes, public squares, and virtual spaces to discuss what it meant for humanity's future. Some celebrated the boldness, while others feared the consequences. Dr. Nancy Clark worked tirelessly in her lab at Berkeley University. Screens surrounded her, filled with alien symbols and translation notes. At 47, she had dedicated her life to understanding communication systems, never imagining she would one day decode an extraterrestrial language. You need to sleep, Nancy, said her assistant, Kelly Brown, placing a cup of coffee beside her. Nancy rubbed her tired eyes. Not yet. The council hearing begins in 3 days. Richard needs everything we can give him. How did you do it? Kelly asked. Their archives were supposed to be unreadable to outsiders. Nancy smiled. Humans are pattern seekers by nature. The council thought their founding language was protected, but they included samples in their historical records. Once I identified repeated symbols in different contexts, I could start building translation models. Kelly looked impressed. They underestimated us. That's been happening throughout human history, Nancy replied. People always underestimate what determination can accomplish. Across the ocean, Admiral Joseph Wilson stood in Earth's orbital Defense Command. Holographic displays showed the positions of 17 Earth ships alongside the much larger Drakari fleet that had moved suspiciously close to the solar system. They're staying just outside the boundary defined in the Council's non-aggression protocols, said Lieutenant Sam Rogers. Joseph nodded. Classic intimidation tactic. They want us to know they're there without technically violating any rules. We're outgunned 10-1, Sam pointed out. If they attack, they won't, Joseph interrupted. Not directly. The Drakari are bullies, but they're careful ones. Breaking council law would cost them too much politically. Joseph studied the display. Despite his confident words, he was worried. Earth ships were new and untested against alien technology. If the Drakari decided humanity was too dangerous to allow into the council, things could get ugly fast. His computer chimed with an incoming transmission. A face appeared on screen, not human, but not entirely unfamiliar either. The being had features that resembled a cat, with golden eyes and fur patterned in subtle swirls. "Admiral Wilson, I am Captain Nylara of the Faloran Protectorate." Joseph straightened. The Falorans were known to be one of the more independent council species. "Captain, this is unexpected. We have been observing the Drakari movements with concern," Nylara said. "Their actions near your system violate the spirit, if not the letter, of council neutrality laws." "We've noticed," Joseph replied dryly. Nylara's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. "The Faloran Protectorate believes in fair treatment for all spacefaring species. We would be willing to share certain defensive protocols that might balance the scales." Joseph tried not to show his surprise. "The Council permits such sharing?" "There are provisions for cultural exchange programs," Nylara said carefully. "What knowledge your people might gain from such exchanges is not regulated in detail." Joseph understood the careful wording. "We would welcome such cultural exchange, Captain." Meanwhile, in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Frank Perkins led a team studying the small pieces of council technology that Earth had legally acquired. The room hummed with energy as scientists from every nation worked together. Frank held up a tiny device no larger than his thumbnail. "This power cell maintains constant output for 50 years without charging. If we can understand its principles, we could revolutionize Earth's energy grid." His colleague, Dr. Olivia Grant, looked up from her workstation. "I think I've identified how their translocation system functions. It's not traditional teleportation, like in science fiction. It creates a temporary fold in space-time." Frank was impressed. "How did you figure that out so quickly?" Olivia shrugged. "I applied quantum field theory concepts from my doctoral work. The math is complex but follows logical patterns. That's what the Council doesn't understand about us," Frank said. "Humans don't just copy technology. We understand it, improve it, make it our own." Across the world, humans worked frantically to prepare for whatever might come next, unlike the Council species who might deliberate for decades before making decisions. Humans moved with urgency born from their shorter lifespans. On the Council capital world of Elysium, Richard and his team prepared for the hearing. Their quarters were comfortable but clearly designed for beings with different physical needs. The lighting was too bright, the furniture too angular. "The Velhari are making a statement," said William Carter, Richard's chief advisor. "They want us uncomfortable, off balance." Richard nodded. "It won't work. We've studied every challenging hearing in Council history, all 7 of them. None succeeded," William reminded him. "None were human," Richard replied with a small smile. The next day, a junior Velhari official arrived at their quarters. The silver-skinned being seemed nervous. "Ambassador Bennett, High Speaker Zorath requests a private meeting before tomorrow's hearing." Richard raised an eyebrow. "That's not part of the official protocol." "It would be unofficial," the aide admitted. Richard considered this. "Please inform the High Speaker I would be happy to meet, but only with my advisors present. No private conversations." After the aide left, William looked concerned. "They're trying to cut a deal. Offer us something to withdraw the challenge." "Of course they are," Richard said. "The hearing threatens their control. For thousands of years they've decided which species advance and when. Our challenge questions their authority." "What will you tell Zorath?" Richard looked out the window at the sprawling alien city. "That humanity isn't interested in special treatment. We want the system changed for everyone." Later that evening, Richard received an urgent message from Earth. The Drakari had sent boarding parties to inspect the human research station on Europa. Though they claimed it was a standard security procedure, everyone understood it was a thinly veiled threat. The station's small security team, led by Chief Maria Lopez, had managed to lock down the sensitive areas before the Drakari forces entered. The aliens were clearly surprised by the humans' quick thinking. They expected us to panic, Maria reported. Instead, we followed the contingency protocols and restricted them to public areas only. Richard sent back a simple message. Hold firm, but avoid confrontation. The real battle happens in the council chamber tomorrow. As Richard prepared for sleep, he thought about Earth, about humanity's long journey to this moment. Throughout history, humans had faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, yet always found a way forward. Tomorrow would test that human spirit once again. One word had started this journey. Avatram, we challenge. Now they needed to show the galaxy exactly what that challenge meant. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council was unlike anything humans had ever built. Its dome stretched nearly a mile high, with walls that shifted colors like oil on water. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber, creating a sea of diverse forms and features. Richard Bennett and his team entered through the main doors, trying not to show their awe. Olivia Grant walked beside him, her dark eyes taking in every detail. At 34, she had risen quickly, through diplomatic ranks due to her brilliant strategic mind. They arranged this to intimidate us, she whispered. The full assembly rarely meets for classification challenges. Richard nodded slightly. It means they're worried. High Speaker Zorath sat at the center of the curved platform that dominated the front of the hall. His silver skin seemed to glow under the chamber lights. On either side sat representatives of the 6 other founding species. This hearing will now commence, Zorath announced, his voice echoing through the vast space. Earth has invoked Article 7 to challenge their observer classification. Ambassador Bennett will present their case. Richard stepped forward to the speaker's position. A small platform rose beneath his feet, lifting him to be visible to all. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, he began. Humanity comes before you, not seeking special treatment but equal treatment under your founding principles. As Richard spoke, images appeared in the air around him, Earth's history, achievements, and rapid development. The Council had provided this technology, expecting humans to struggle with it. Instead, Olivia controlled the display with subtle hand movements, having mastered the interface overnight. In just 3 centuries, Richard continued, humanity advanced from horse-drawn carriages to interplanetary colonies. Where other species took thousands of years to develop similar technologies, we did so in a fraction of the time. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates seemed impressed, others disturbed. This very adaptability concerns us, interrupted a Drakari representative. His scaled face showed clear hostility. Species that advance too quickly often bring chaos and destruction. Richard nodded respectfully. A valid concern. Yet consider this. Our shorter lifespans drive us to solve problems quickly rather than deliberate for centuries. What you see as dangerous haste, we see as necessary efficiency. The debate continued for hours. Various council members questioned Richard and his team about Earth's history, technology, and intentions. Unlike previous classification challenges, the humans had answers for everything, often surprising the council with their depth of knowledge. During a brief recess, Richard and Olivia retreated to a small side chamber to review their strategy. They're focusing on our conflicts, Olivia said. We need to shift the narrative. Richard rubbed his tired eyes. It's time to use what Nancy found. When the hearing resumed, Richard requested permission to present new evidence. Zorath reluctantly agreed. Our xenolinguists have studied council history extensively, Richard began. We discovered something interesting. Earth was visited by council scouts in the year 1547 by our calendar. The chamber erupted with noise. Zorath slammed his ceremonial staff for order. This is absurd, he declared. The council has strict protocols against contacting pre-spaceflight civilizations. Richard smiled. Yet it happened. Your own archives confirm it, though the records were buried deep. He gestured, and ancient log entries appeared in the air. A survey vessel documented Earth for 60 days, even making contact with several humans. An elderly being with crystalline features leaned forward. This was Elder Christos of the Archivists, one of the original council races. "These records appear authentic," Christos said, his voice like grinding stones. "If true, this violates our most sacred principles of non-interference." "We do not bring this up to cast blame," Richard said carefully. "Rather, to highlight that humanity has had longer connection to the galactic community than previously acknowledged." The mood in the chamber shifted. Several elder species began private consultations, clearly troubled by this revelation. Zorath seemed less composed than before. "These ancient incidents, even if true, do not change Earth's current development status." "Perhaps not," Richard conceded. "But they do raise questions about the Council's consistency in applying its own rules." The Drakari representative stood suddenly. "This human uses clever words to distract from the real issue. Their species is dangerous and unpredictable. They should remain under close observation for their own safety and ours." Olivia stepped forward. "With respect, the Drakari concern about unpredictability seems misplaced given recent events around Europa." This caused another stir. The Drakari's unauthorized inspection of the human outpost had not been publicly acknowledged. "What events?" asked a small feathered being from the Outer Rim territories. Olivia produced video evidence of the Drakari ship surrounding the Europa station. "While this hearing proceeds, military vessels have been deployed to intimidate our outposts. Is this the Council's idea of neutrality during a classification challenge?" The Drakari representative's scales darkened with rage. "We were conducting standard security procedures." "Without authorization from the full Council?" asked Elder Christos. "Most irregular." As the debate intensified, Richard introduced humanity's final argument. "The Council was founded to unite diverse species across the galaxy, yet your current system sorts worlds into rigid categories based on development timelines that favor certain evolutionary paths over others." Richard displayed a chart showing how species with longer lifespans and slower reproduction rates received consistently better treatment under Council protocols. Humanity offers a different perspective, one that values innovation and adaptation. "We propose reforms that would benefit not just Earth, but all developing worlds." A surprising ally emerged as a representative of the Faloran Protectorate stood. "The humans raise valid points. Our own world waited 3 centuries for full membership. Despite meeting all technical requirements much earlier, other middle-tier species began speaking up, many sharing similar experiences of what they viewed as unnecessary delays in their advancement. Zorath struggled to maintain order as the hearing transformed into a broader debate about Council governance. The carefully controlled system was showing cracks for the first time in thousands of years. "This challenge has exceeded its intended scope," Zorath declared. "The Assembly will recess for 3 days to consider these matters." As the session ended, Richard and his team were approached by representatives from a dozen different worlds, each wanting private discussions. What had begun as a simple classification challenge was evolving into something much larger. "You've started something that cannot be easily stopped," Elder Christos told Richard quietly. "Many have been dissatisfied with Velhari leadership for centuries, but lacked a catalyst for change." Richard looked around at the bustling chamber, at the animated conversations happening among species that rarely interacted. "That wasn't our intention, but perhaps it's what the Council needs." "Change always appears threatening to those who benefit from the current order," Christos replied. "The coming days will test all of us." As Richard and Olivia left the chamber, they knew the real challenge was just beginning. Humanity had found its voice in the galactic community, but powerful forces would fight to silence it. The next phase would determine whether Earth would rise in standing or face dangerous consequences for their boldness. The 3-day recess stretched into a week as the Council fell into heated debates. Species that had been silent for centuries suddenly voiced long-held grievances. The Velhari leadership struggled to maintain control over the proceedings. Earth Admiral Joseph Wilson received troubling news. The Drakari fleet had moved closer to the outer planets, and strange energy readings suggested they were preparing their weapons systems. "They're not just posturing anymore," Joseph told the Emergency Defense Council. "Intelligence suggests they may attempt a limited strike to demonstrate our vulnerability." "Can we stop them?" asked the Secretary of Defense, a silver-haired woman named Linda Harris. Joseph displayed the tactical situation. "Not directly, but thanks to our Faloran allies, we've upgraded our early warning systems. We won't be caught by surprise." On Europa, Governor Diane Powell reviewed the new security protocols with her team. The small colony of 7,000 people lived beneath the icy surface in a network of tunnels and domes. "All non-essential personnel should remain in the inner habitats," she instructed. "Security teams will run continuous patrols, and everyone carries emergency breathers at all times." Her chief of security, Paul Martinez, looked concerned. "The Drakari have ships that could crack our ice shield like an egg. If they decide to hit us, these measures won't be enough." Diane nodded grimly. "I know, but we've added a few surprises they won't expect." She pulled up schematics showing new installations around the colony. Dr. Perkins sent these modified shield generators. They're based on Faloran designs, but with human innovations. "Will they work?" Paul asked. "They'll have to," Diane replied. Back on Elysium, Richard received an urgent message from Olivia, who had been meeting with representatives from middle-tier council worlds. "The Drakari are planning something," she told him when they met in a secure room. "Multiple sources confirm they've been gathering support for immediate action against Earth." Richard frowned. "They can't attack directly without council approval. They're calling it a security quarantine, technically allowed under emergency protocols if they can prove we pose an imminent threat." Olivia passed him a data tablet. "They're presenting this evidence at tomorrow's session." The tablet showed doctored images suggesting Earth was developing weapons based on stolen council technology. The fabrications were clever, mixing real photos of Earth research facilities with false details. "We need to counter this immediately," Richard said. "There's more," Olivia added grimly. "The Velhari have privately agreed to support the Drakari motion in exchange for their help maintaining the current council power structure." Richard paced the room. "We need allies. The Falorans are with us, along with several Outer Rim worlds," Olivia said. "But it's not enough against the founding species if they unite against us." Richard stopped suddenly. The archivists. Elder Christos seemed troubled by the council's actions. "The archivists rarely take sides in council disputes," Olivia pointed out. "Exactly why their support would matter," Richard replied. "I need to speak with Christos immediately." Finding the ancient being proved difficult. The archivists kept to themselves in a separate wing of the council complex. After hours of searching, Richard finally located Christos in a vast library filled with physical records, actual books and scrolls from across the galaxy. "Ambassador Bennett," Christos said, his crystalline features catching the light. "I expected you might seek me out." Richard explained the situation. Christos listened silently, occasional flickers of light passing through his translucent body. "The Drakari actions are troubling," Christos finally said. "More troubling is the Velhari complicity. For too long the council has drifted from its founding purpose. Will you help us?" Richard asked directly. Christos made a sound like chimes in the wind, an archivist laugh. So human, direct and impatient. He rose to his full height, towering over Richard. "I cannot openly oppose the Velhari, but there is another way." The next day, the council reconvened. Zorath opened the session with unusual haste. "Urgent security matters take precedence over the Earth classification hearing," he announced. "The Drakari delegation has evidence of concerning activities requiring immediate action." The Drakari representative stepped forward, displaying the falsified evidence. "These images clearly show humans adapting council technology for weapons development in violation of membership protocols." Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Richard requested the right to respond but was denied by Zorath. Given the serious nature of these allegations, The Council will vote immediately on implementing a security quarantine around Earth's solar system, Zorath declared. This was unprecedented. Voting without debate violated Council procedures. Several delegations protested, but the Velhari security drones moved into position, silencing objections. Just as the vote was about to begin, Elder Christos stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. An archivist interrupting proceedings was extremely rare. Before this vote proceeds, Christos said, his voice resonating through the hall, I must invoke Founder's oversight. Even Zorath seemed shocked. Elder Christos, that protocol has not been used in over 5,000 years. Yet it remains valid under Council law, Christos replied. As keeper of the original charter, I have determined that these proceedings violate fundamental principles upon which the Council was founded. This is unnecessary, Zorath insisted. We are following emergency security protocols. Are you? Christos asked. He gestured, and the central display changed to show communications between the Velhari and Drakari leadership. Secret messages plotting against Earth. How did you obtain those? The Drakari representative demanded. Christos ignored him. The archivists have monitored all Council communications since the Great Schism. We rarely intervene, but this conspiracy threatens the integrity of the entire Council. The chamber erupted into chaos. Accusations flew as alliances fractured. The carefully orchestrated vote collapsed as delegations demanded explanations. In the midst of the disorder, Richard received an urgent message from Earth. The Drakari had launched their attack on Europa, clearly having planned to strike regardless of the Council's vote. Richard jumped to his feet. High Speaker, Drakari forces are attacking a human settlement as we speak. Is this the action of a responsible Council member? The accusation cut through the noise. Live feeds from Europa appeared on the central display, showing Drakari warships, firing on the colony's outer defenses. What the feed showed next shocked everyone. The modified shields were holding. Governor Powell's team had adapted the Feloran technology in ways the Drakari never expected. Their weapons, designed to overwhelm standard defenses, were being deflected. More surprising, Europa's defense systems were strictly non-lethal. They disabled Drakari weapons without destroying their ships, demonstrating restraint that contrasted sharply with the aggression. Zorath could no longer control the situation. The Council meeting dissolved into separate factions, with the middle tier species rallying around Earth's representatives while the founding races argued among themselves. Elder Christos approached Richard quietly. You have revealed the cracks in our foundation, human. What happens next will reshape galactic governance for millennia to come. Richard watched the ongoing chaos with a mixture of hope and fear. I just hope Earth survives to see it. The attack on Europa changed everything. Images of Drakari warships firing on a civilian colony spread across the galaxy. Species that had been neutral suddenly took sides. The Council, which had maintained peace for 12,000 years, stood on the brink of collapse. On Europa, Governor Diane Powell coordinated the defense efforts from a reinforced command center. The modified shields continued to hold, but power reserves were dropping. We can maintain full protection for another 6 hours at most, reported Paul Martinez, watching the energy readings with concern. Diane nodded. That should be enough. Earth forces are on their way, and several Council species have pledged support. Outside, the Drakari continued their assault, frustrated by their inability to break through. Their commander, General Vrax, had expected an easy victory to demonstrate human weakness. Instead, he faced the embarrassment of being held back by supposedly primitive technology. In orbit above Europa, a new ship appeared, not human or Drakari, but Feloran. Captain Nylara had arrived with a small but powerful escort fleet, Drakari. Vessels, she broadcast on open channels. You are in violation of Council neutrality laws. Cease your attack immediately or face consequences. General Vrax was outraged. This is a security operation authorized by... It was authorized by nothing but your own ambition, Nylara interrupted. The Council is aware of your deception. Stand down now. More ships began appearing, vessels from a dozen middle-tier council species, all responding to Elder Christos's call for intervention. The Drakari, suddenly outnumbered, reluctantly withdrew. On Elysium, the council remained in disarray. Zorath had lost control of the proceedings entirely as faction fought against faction. Richard Bennett and Olivia Grant worked tirelessly, meeting with representatives from various worlds, building a coalition for change. The system has been broken for millennia, Richard told a group of delegates. Species advance at different rates for different reasons. A one-size-fits-all approach serves no one well. Elder Christos approached their growing alliance. I have accessed the central archives, he said. There is something you all should see. In the heart of the council complex, beneath layers of security, was a chamber few had ever entered. Here, the original founders had created the governing AI that had once guided the council's early days. The system was designed to adapt and grow with the council, Christos explained as they entered. But over time, the Velhari restricted its functions, preferring to maintain their own power rather than follow its guidance. The chamber was dimly lit, centered around a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft light. Christos placed his hand on a control panel, and the ancient system began to activate. Displays flickered to life around them, showing records dating back to the council's founding. For thousands of years, the AI collected data on all member species, Christos said. It was programmed to ensure fair governance and prevent any single group from dominating others. Richard stepped closer to the displays. Why show us this now? Because the system was never truly deactivated, Christos replied. It continued to observe and analyze. Recent events, your challenge, the Drakari attack, the Velhari conspiracy, have triggered its emergency protocols. The central crystal glowed brighter, and a voice filled the chamber. Neither male nor female, but calm and clear. Protocol 7 Alpha initiated. Council governance structure compromise detected. Beginning system restoration. Across the entire council complex, every screen and display changed simultaneously. The AI was taking control of the communications network, broadcasting evidence of corruption and manipulated decisions stretching back centuries. In the main council chamber, chaos erupted as Zorath tried desperately to shut down the system. This is a malfunction, he shouted. The ancient system is corrupted. But the evidence was overwhelming. The AI displayed thousands of instances where the Velhari had altered votes, suppressed information, and manipulated other species. Most damning were records showing how they had deliberately slowed the advancement of promising worlds to maintain their power advantage. The founder's voice continued. Governance restructuring required. Emergency council to be formed with equal representation from all membership tiers. After hours of turmoil, a temporary peace settled over the council. The Velhari leadership had been removed from power. Representatives from 17 worlds, including Earth, were selected to form an interim governing body. Richard found himself named to this emergency council, the first human to hold such a position in galactic governance. I never expected this outcome, he told Olivia as they prepared for the first meeting. No one did, she replied. But that's humanity's gift to the galaxy, the unexpected. In the following weeks, dramatic changes swept through galactic society. The classification system was reformed, with advancement based on demonstrated capabilities rather than arbitrary timelines. Earth was granted full membership status, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. Admiral Joseph Wilson welcomed the Faloran fleet to Earth orbit, the first official state visit from a council world. Captain Nylara seemed fascinated by human cities and culture. Your people accomplish so much in such short lives, she observed. My species lives 3 times longer than yours, yet we would never have thought to challenge the council as you did. Short lives make us impatient, Joseph explained with a smile. We can't afford to wait centuries for progress. On Europa, Governor Powell's team worked alongside alien engineers to improve their defensive systems. The modifications they had made to the Faloran shields had impressed even their creators. Soon, the technology was being adapted by worlds throughout the galaxy, another human innovation spreading rapidly. Dr. Nancy Clark found herself leading a new initiative to create a universal translation system based on her work with the ancient Council language. Scientists from dozens of species joined her team, bringing perspectives no single world could have developed alone. 6 months after the single word that started everything, Richard stood before the newly reformed Galactic Council. The chamber looked different now, redesigned to accommodate all species equally without the hierarchical tiers of the past. "We gather today to finalize the new charter," Richard announced, "a document that honors our diverse paths while recognizing our common future." Elder Christos, now head of the advisory council, nodded in approval. The founders would be pleased. Their vision was always one of unity through diversity, not conformity through control. The founders' AI, now fully restored and integrated into council operations, displayed the new charter for all to see. At its center was a simple principle. All spacefaring species, regardless of origin or development path, share equal rights to grow, learn, and contribute to galactic prosperity. As Richard looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds, he thought about how far they had come. One word, Avitram, had indeed shattered the old council. But from those fragments, something stronger was being built. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by following the established path, but by blazing a new one. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.